Hello, this is Edward O'Daniel with the veteranlandlord.com, and I want to welcome you to the property tenant lifecycle training. Right now, we'll hop right into it, but I wanted to create a little bit of training for landlords to help you kind of understand all the major sort of points that you need to be aware of whenever somebody has an occupied property and then that property goes vacant, the tenant moves out, or when the property is vacant and you actually need to get it occupied and get it rented. So I know those are pretty much the two phases that landlords go through, but what I want to do is bring up some of the major bullet points that happen between each one of those phases and kind of dive into it a little bit more detail just so that you understand what's coming up and what's going to happen so you can start doing things and not wasting as much time doing things because you already know what the next step is going to need to be. So right now, these are sort of the major bullet points from a property going occupied to going vacant. We just need to give the tenant needs to give notice for the landlord to move out. So we need some notice that they're leaving. We want to make sure that we send them some instructions on what to do. We need to make sure we start marketing the property. We're going to schedule a move out walkthrough and even kind of get the locks changed, on that same day to kind of secure the property, and then process and return the security deposits. So that's pretty much the steps from being occupied to vacant. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop into each one of these and give you specific individual bullet points within each one of these topics on what you should be looking for and what you need to be doing in each step, just to make sure that you understand the process so you can get everything scheduled so that you can be as efficient as possible. So let's hop right into it. Tenant provides notice to landlord. Right now, the lease that we have at veteranlandlord.com that actually I use, this requires at least 60 days notice from the tenant. So the tenant is going to need to at least let you know 2 months ahead of time in writing. And this could be an email, not a text message, but like an email or a physical letter at your mailing address to say, we're not going to stay, we want to continue to move. Okay? Now, whenever we get those, that happens in sort of one or two ways. Sometimes the tenants contact us, but sometimes we actually run a lease expiration report. So if you have like a property management system in place, and if you don't know what that is, you can check out our property management system training that we have that kind of goes over what those are and how those work. But if you have a property management system, most of the time those have a report on them that you can run, and it's typically called like a lease expiration report. So you can go like 30 days, 60 days, 90 days out as far as you want to say, tell me all the leases that are expiring here in the next so long, 30 or 60 days. And then you can contact them and actually see if they want to stay or if they're going to be moving, or if they contact you, either way. But the point of this is to make sure that you don't get to the very end of your lease with a few days left, find out the person is going to move just for something silly, like something's not working in the property correctly, or they don't necessarily like the way it looks, and if you repainted they would stay. They're happy with it, but they don't want to fix it, or they might want a dishwasher, and if they have a dishwasher then they'll stay. It could be a variety of different things, but that's the first thing that we always try to do is whenever somebody's looking to leave, we try to find out why is it that you're leaving. Now obviously if they've had a baby or if their family has grown and they need more space, there's really nothing much you're going to be able to do about that. You're not going to add an additional room onto the property to keep them. That's just not cost effective. However, if it's something like, we don't like the carpet, or that, you need to refresh the property, like repaint it up. I like hardwood floors. I don't like carpet. The allergies are too bad for our kids. Stuff like that. That's something that you may want to invest in changing something up to keep them in there if they're a good enough tenant. So, but the notice period, that 60 days, gives you enough time to identify who they are, to sit down and make calls to find out if it's possible to save them keep them from moving out. And if it's not, then at least to be able to start moving forward with your next step on getting the property re-rented. Okay? So right now, again, the tenant should notify you, or you can call them. Either way, that's always, as long as somebody's communicating with they don't want to stay, that's all you need. You just don't want to get to the end of it and find out they're leaving in just a few days. So and the lease and the landlord starter kit allows you to show the property to new renters. That's very important that you have in your lease. So during that 60 days, you need to be able to make sure that you can go in, of course, at scheduled times. You just don't want to drop by whenever. You just want to be polite and respectful to your tenants. Give them at least the standard 24-hour notice. less if they're okay with it, but at least 24 hours to say, hey, we're going to bring some people through to possibly rent the property. And we want to show them the property before you move out. Sometimes tenants don't like that because they don't like people coming in their house and showing properties. But as far as you're concerned, your job is to get that property re-rented as soon as possible after they moved out. And if somebody can go in and take a look at the property beforehand, then that gives you that full 60 days to be able to line another tenant up. So as soon as one tenant leaves, it's very minimal downtime, to get the property fixed up, turn it around, do what you need to do, and then move the next tenant in. So that right there is the first step. It's just once you provide notice, is just to get a good understanding of why, potentially solve any of the tenant issues to keep them from moving out, but to make sure that it's clear that you will set up a time to actually have that property shown, and that is in your lease. If they ever complain, you can just simply say it's in your lease within the last 60 days that we have the right to put a for rent sign in your yard if we want to. We can show your property with the proper notice to you and so forth. But of course, be respectful and so forth while you do it. So the next thing is move out instructions. So whenever the tenant moves out, a lot of landlords fail at this because they don't understand that they expect the tenant to know what to do. And don't make that assumption. Don't make the assumption that they know how you want the property returned to you, because a lot of people haven't ever trained a tenant on how to leave a property. You would, of course, being the landlord, say, well, I want you to return it in the same condition I gave it to you in. If it was clean and move-in ready when you moved in, then I want it clean and move-in ready when you move out. So, of course, minus normal wear and tear. We can't, we always have to provide for normal wear and tear, but send them a letter. And in the landlord starter kit, that's the security deposit checklist. So if you send that to them, that's a list of instructions on, hey, I just want to make sure that we're on the same team and I'm trying to get you the most back of your security deposit as I can. Please make sure that all of these items in the list are checked and done. So that's just like cleaning the property, making sure the appliances are cleaned, cutting the grass, cleaning the yard up, things like that. Those are all the things that you want them to do before you take the property back, because that's going to stop you from having to have somebody do it and then take it out of their security deposit. So you definitely want to send that to them. And then what type of tasks should be done? Just like broom sweep, clean the property, clean the appliances, vacuum clean carpets, things like that. And the lease that you actually have in the landlord starter kit also provides for cleaning. So if the carpets were in there, typically it doesn't take very much to clean carpets, to steam clean them. So whenever they move out, you want to make sure they get steam cleaned again for the next people moving in, because you don't know what's been done on the carpet. You don't know if they've had pets in there. You don't know what's going on. So you just want to make sure, from just a safety, allergen type of perspective, that you get those cleaned up for the next people to move in. And then, of course, when they move out, you would expect the carpets to be cleaned at their expense. So marketing the property. So next, when you start marketing the property, as soon as you know that property is vacant and you can't salvage the particular tenant, you need to start posting that property online. So if you're posting it, this could be things like, posting the stuff on Zillow. You could be posting it on Craigslist if you still use Craigslist. You can do flyers, you can do ads. But most of the people nowadays are looking for online marketing. Being able to post and get your property syndicated out to several different online directories, Zillow, Trulia, Hotpads, things like that. So you want to get your marketing out there. But the biggest thing is you want to make sure that you represent the property in its current state. So you don't want to be using very old pictures of it, like when you bought it 10 years ago or something. You want to make sure it represents the property as it is right now. So you would need current photos, and just something from the last year or two would work, as long as that's still an accurate representation of how that property looks today. Post those online and so forth. So one of the benefits that I actually mentioned in another training, the property management systems training, that's also available to you, is having a property management system makes this very easy, because if that property is already set up, it's just a matter of like clicking a button, and then boom, now that property is available and it's already out there and online, ready to start generating leads for you. So you don't have to go through all the trouble of posting it to multiple different websites if you have a property management system. Again, that's just one of the advantages. So if you have, so put as much information in the property posting as you can. That's another valuable piece of information. So if you, for instance, if you're going to make the If the property has certain appliances, make sure you put those appliances in there. If you want to make sure that pets are allowed or pets are not allowed, make sure you put that in there. If you're going to utilize housing voucher program, we do have a HUD Section 8 training. If I don't know if you're interested in that, but there's some training that we offer through Veteran Landlord that you can look at. If you're interested in that program, again, make sure you put that into your marketing. You want to put as much stuff into your marketing as possible, even potentially your qualifications. So if somebody needs to make X amount of money, if they need to have X amount of credit score, if they need to be working in their job for so long, all of those things are your qualifications. Those are your standards by which somebody has to meet in order to become a tenant of yours. Well, make sure you put that all of it in your ad, in the marketing part of your ad, so that people know. When they read it, they understand what it is. Because other than that, you're going to be getting a lot of calls, a lot of email. What are your qualifications? Do this. Do you accept housing voucher program? Do you do this or pets allowed? And it's just so much easier if you put it in the marketing ad. Now you will still get calls, you will still get emails, but just not as much. So put all of that stuff in the marketing. Try to put as much pictures as you possibly can in there so that people have a good idea before even going to the property. So all of that stuff should be put in there, and then that will make it so much easier. Now, again, if you're not using the management system, you could use something like Zillow Rent Manager. That's available to landlords. You can create a free account. You can log in there. You can post your properties for Zillow. I believe there is some small charges for posting properties, but I think it's well worth it for Zillow Rent Manager to get online and to get syndicated out to all of the other sites. Craigslist or any other posting sites that you normally use, but you want to get the marketing of your property up and going as soon as possible, because most of the times it takes about a full day, sometimes two, to syndicate and get your property out there into all of these online directories so that people can start finding your property online. Because when that happens, then that's when all the leads start coming in. So once you start getting the marketing, now you need to worry about the move out inspection. So for the tenant, so you've already scheduled it. So follow me on this one here. You found out 60 days ahead of time the person's moving out. You call them the next day and you had a discussion. They're definitely moving out. They had a kid and they want a bigger place, or they're buying a house for themselves or something like that. So they're not going to stay. So you put the property up and you already did the marketing. You sent them the letter that same day. So all of these things can be done fairly quickly within a small amount of time to get them the letter of what it's going to take to move out, to call them and communicate with them and make sure they understand how you want the property back. Then at that particular point, you do the marketing, and now it's almost like become a waiting game. So you do the move out inspection. Of course, I would always advise that you try to get the move out inspection done as soon as possible. But I want to make sure you want to do it as soon as possible, but don't do it any later than the day after the end of their lease. That's it. That's the absolute last time that you should allow people to move out without having to pay additional rent. So if they do have to stay another couple of days, then you need to make sure that you charge them a couple of days worth of rent, even if they're not living there, because they're keeping the property off the market. But again, one day after the lease ends, that's when you need to do the move out walkthrough, and you want to do it as soon as you can. But use the move out inspection form that comes with the landlord starter kit and go through the property and indicate to the tenant anything that they're responsible for. So if there's a broken window, they have to pay for that. If the toilet doesn't flush, I'm just throwing out some examples, then that's something that they're going to have to pay for. If the shower doesn't drain, if it backs up and it doesn't drain, maybe the person living there has a bunch of hair and they clogged it. Well, it wasn't clogged when they moved in, so they're going to have to unclog it because that's not the condition that you gave it to when they moved in. So all of these things eventually add up. You want to make sure that you add all that stuff up, because you need to remove that from their security deposit so that they pay for that, so that you're not out of any money for that. So you're going to add all that stuff up and just let them know that you will get their security deposit back within a certain amount of time. Now, the issue with that is each state typically kind of has their own return policy. Typically, I think it's a pretty good standard that it's about 30 days. 30 days after they move out is when you have to get them their security deposit back to them, or there could be some possible fines. Other states, it could be sooner. Your state, just please check on the regulations for when you need to get the security deposit back, and just make sure that you have it back to them in that time frame. So Now what it comes down to is during the same process, you need to start building a list of all those expenses. How much is it going to take to replace that window? How much is it going to cost to have somebody come out and unclog the toilet or to snake the shower drain? All of those things need to be added up and put on your security deposit disposition letter that says, here's all the charges that you have. And I think I'm kind of jumping the gun a little bit for the security deposits, but all of that stuff needs to be calculated and you need to get those numbers as soon as you can. So right now, after the move out, you've already done the move out with them. You've walked through the property. Everything's good. The tenants know what they have to pay for, and they know that you're going to send them their remaining security deposit back. At that point, now what it really comes down to is making sure that the property is secure. So you need to make sure that the locks on the front door, back door, however many, get changed. If there's a garage door code, you want to make sure you change the garage door code for that, reprogram that, make sure all the windows are locked, things like that. You just want to make sure that you secure the property because at this point, it's probably going to be vacant until you can get somebody else in there. So you want to make sure you get that stuff done, get the tenant's forwarding address, make sure you do that before they leave to get to return the security deposits and make sure that you know where to return it to. Make a list of all the items that need to be done. So now that they're gone, not only do you have to fix the items that were not of normal wear and tear, for instance, the broken window, the clogged toilet, and so forth, those are things that are not normal wear and tear, but now you have to fix all the other stuff. So you could have rundown carpet. If your carpet is old and it needs to be replaced, then you need to add that to your list, even though you don't charge your tenant for it. That's just a turnover cost that you need to put in there. So you need to get a list and build what I call a scope of work for all of that stuff that needs to be done. Now, depending upon if you do it or if you have contractors do it, at the same time you do the move out, just so you don't have to go back to the property, once the tenants leave and you do the move out, then this is when you're securing the property, you're changing the locks, and you can have somebody else there with you doing all this stuff if you want to. But you also need to build a scope of work on how to get the property in rent-ready condition again. So once you do that, then that gives you a list of what you need to finish to get it turned around. It could be repainting, it could be new carpet, it could be fix some appliances. I'm not sure what you would do, but you kind of get the point. All of that should be done at that particular time as to not have to go back to the property and do it again later. Now, once you have all of that, you should definitely put a lockbox or a code box, and I'm going to bring up a code box a little bit later on, what those are. It's kind of like a smart lockbox. But you can put a lockbox, just something that has one key in it on the front door or just on one of the doors that actually can allow contractors or somebody to go in and out of the property. Okay, so you always have a key on site just in case you want to send somebody over there to get work done. They can do it without you having to go over there and open and close the door for them. So that's kind of all the stuff that should happen on the move out inspection, just to compact all of the stuff that you need to get done into a short amount of time to make sure you can get this thing turned around as quickly as possible. Now, one of the last thing you need to do is just get them their security deposit back. So go through the move out inspection form, determine what repairs need to be done, get bids, or if you're doing the repairs yourself, you still need to assign a cost, a material cost and a labor cost. I mean, you can have them separate or combine them, but you just need to give them a cost of what something costs. Now, you also need to make sure if they don't give you all the keys back, I mean, the lease that we have actually has provisions for lost keys. If they don't give you the keys back, then there's a cost for a key. What if they don't give you a garage door opener back? Then you need to make sure that, not only do you charge them for the cost of a new garage door opener, but you need the cost of going and get one, the cost of programming one for something. All of that stuff needs to go to be applied toward the move out cost that applies for their security deposit, because you deserve to get paid for your time. If you have to go do all that stuff, or at least your contractor does. So right now, fill out the security deposit deposition form that you have available. You're just making a note of here's your security deposit, here's all the expenses that we talked about on the move out, here's how much they're charging for, and this is how much the check is going to be for your return of the remainder of your security deposit, or here's the balance that you owe that could be excessive above and beyond what your security deposit is. That's always possible as well, depending on the level of damage. And again, check your state law for when the security deposits need to be returned. That's very important. So right now, before we kind of get into the opposite of that, all of this right here, and I'm just going to back up real quick. These all need to be done whenever somebody's moving out. Now, if you do this, I know this kind of sounds like a lot, But if you do this, this should not take a lot of your time. The notice of moving out, calling the tenants, sending the move out instructions, marketing, just that right there might be an hour of your time. If you really think about it, might be an hour, could even be less of your time just to get those three done. By the time you call a tenant, speak to them on the phone for a few minutes, find out they're not staying, email them some instructions with an email, confirm they got it, start the marketing of your property, schedule a move out walkthrough. You can do that while you're on the phone with them and just get that at least scheduled. So all of that is done, and then from that point on, you're kind of in a holding pattern until the tenant moves out. Then when the tenant moves out, then you can finish the remaining part of it. But at least you've got all the things that you need to up and going. Now, the one thing that you need to do is when you start marketing the property, one of the things you are going to start getting leads for that particular property. So if you're getting leads while the tenants are still in there, you need to make sure you coordinate with them about showing them and so forth. So now let's go back to the opposite. Now the property is vacant and now we need to get it occupied. So now we have to go through and things that we're going to have to get involved with is turning the unit over, doing the make ready. Okay, and this is really just implementing the stuff that you've already done in the move out walkthrough when you created the scope of work. You need to start implementing that now. Either do it yourself or get contractors over there to get it done. But that needs to be finished. You need to start processing the leads for marketing. Now, ultimately, you're going to start processing leads whenever you start doing your marketing. But it just depends upon when you post that property up and how many leads that you get. But ultimately, you're going to be processing leads for marketing as soon as your marketing goes live from somebody being in it to being vacant in the other process. So showing the property to prospective tenants, taking the process applications, filling out the lease for the new tenant, getting them moved in, getting the security deposit to hold it, and then finally moving the tenant in. So here's all the things that you need to look forward to whenever you're trying to fill the property, and you want to do them as quickly as you possibly can, as efficiently. So turning the unit, realistically, it's just taking the list of items that you already have and start implementing it to get that turned around. So whether it be replace new carpet, get stuff painted. Now when the property goes vacant, at that point you can get people over there right away to begin getting that done and getting it ready for the tenant to move into. Now, sometimes there are some cities across the United States and municipalities that require inspections. They're called occupancy inspections. So you may very well have to get your home, your unit, apartment inspected by a local city official before you're allowed to move somebody in. So those people that don't have that probably sounds foreign to you or like crazy. But right now there are some cities across the United States that are implementing occupancy permit programs. That's what they're called, where you have to get a permit to have somebody to be able to live in there. And they're just coming through and just making sure that your property or your unit is up to code. So that's kind of what you need to do. If you're getting the stuff, if you're turning the unit over, you want to make sure that you go get the inspection as quickly as you can. Some of the inspectors are overworked in some areas, so it could take you as much as a week or even longer to get an inspection of the property. So you want to make sure you get that scheduled as soon as you can. Processing leads. So now, as you start processing these leads, and again, this could happen even back when people are still living in there, but now you want to keep track of all the leads that you get. Okay, you may be getting calls from prospective tenants that want to view the property or fill out an application, but right now you need to be able to handle that. So you need to think about what kind of marketing phone number you're going to use. Are you going to be putting an email? Who's going to be getting that? Who's going to be responding to these emails about the processing of the leads or answering questions and so forth? So this would be a time whether or not you want to handle it or you have an assistant or somebody like that handle this particular process, but you're going to have to keep track of all the people that are interested. Like probably the simplest way would just be to build a spreadsheet to have a list of all the people, their names and phone numbers, and maybe the address of the property. If you have multiple properties that you're trying to fill, you're just trying to have a simple spreadsheet that keeps track of everybody. Okay, because ultimately you're going to have to schedule those. If it's occupied, you're going to have to schedule it. And if you do schedule it while somebody's living in there, you should schedule it more as an open house. Schedule 30 minutes where you can invite multiple people over during that period to look at it. Sometimes the tenants will be there, sometimes they won't, but at least you have a small amount of time that you have multiple people coming instead of trying to schedule multiple smaller individual sessions, because that's going to be a huge time saver for you to do them all as a sort of an open house. And it's going to be less frustrations on that. So, again, having a management system or a third party application um, provide works well here because you can include a link to fill out an application directly in your marketing. So this is one of the things I covered in the property management systems training, that if you do have a property management system, a lot of them, you can put a link in there to your provider, or they even have like an apply now button where you can actually click on it and fill out an application online. So there have been people I've had that have actually filled out an application and to a particular property without even have seen it yet, because just you did a good enough job with the pictures that you have, with the with all the descriptions and how the property is set up. That right there alone can get somebody interested in filling out an application, because when people go look at applications, you have to kind of think like a renter or a tenant. If I'm going to go around and look at lots of different properties, if it is a good property, most of the times somebody who's already seen it is going to fill out an application and get it before I even get there. So one of the things you might want to do is to offer the ability for people to fill out an application beforehand, and if they don't like it, offer them a refund of their application fee if your system handles that. So that's one other thing that you could do, is to see about offering them a refund, because it's almost like a guarantee. So they figure, what do I have to lose? I'm going to apply, and then if I see it and I don't like it, then I can always either possibly move to another unit. You can always take that application and apply it toward another property you have vacant if there's another good one, or you can just simply refund their application fee if you haven't processed it yet. So next is going to be showing the property. So this right here, showing the property, is by far the suckiest thing that you can do as a landlord. I mean, to me, I hated this. I'll be honest. It was the worst waste of time ever. This is one of the main reasons why I'm trying to say show them as sort of an open house. Show the property, get multiple people there at one time. Because if you get 5 people there and only 1 or 2 people show up, then at least you were there and 1 or 2 people showed up. But I can't tell you how many times I've tried to set up individual sessions with people, and then I'm there and then I'm calling them. They don't respond. We had a scheduled appointment and they don't show up, and it's just a big waste of your time. So that's one of the things, even when you called ahead early, we've done that too, where you're going out there and until that you get a call from that person, then you don't even bother leaving. So you tell them to call you 30 minutes before you're there. Even that doesn't always work. So having multiple people go into an open house really worked well for me, and that's what I want to share with you. Many of the landlords are moving to using a self-showing solution. So I wanted to at least introduce that if you haven't been using that. One of the problems that you have with showing a property is that trying to schedule your time and the renter's time, and if the renter has a partner or a husband-wife, that becomes a problem trying to schedule it at a certain time. So right now, one of the biggest things and the most efficient ways I've seen this happen is self-showings, where there's a box on the door where somebody has to register, but once they register, then they get a code to go in and look at the property by themselves. So right now, I've really never had a problem with anybody. You would think that, if I'm giving them a key, they could do all these things to the house and they could vandalize it and steal this and steal that. Well, I mean, don't have anything in there that somebody could just grab and go, if that makes sense. But nobody's going to damage or vandalize your property. At least I hope not. That has never really happened to me on all the self showings that we've done, but it saves a tremendous amount of time on your side. And I'll show you how you can protect yourself with that. Now, earlier I mentioned about a code box. So a code box, and I even put the website here, codeboxinc.com. The codeboxinc.com will sell you a code box, and they're relatively inexpensive, $60, and all it takes is a 9-volt battery. In these things, you typically get a lithium, one of the longer batteries, but for $60, here's what you get. You get a box that basically you have to generate a code for everybody that goes in, versus a lockbox where it's the same code for everybody. So you don't want to, it's one of the problems that I always hated about lockboxes. You give somebody the code, they can give the code to their friend. Their friend can go over there without registering with you and they can go in there, or you have to go every other day or every week and change the code on the lockbox to keep people from going back in case they already have the code. This solved this whole problem for me. The code box The code box is something very simple. It just has numeric pads, it has a 9-volt battery, it is digital. So you have to generate a code for them. And you can do this it's a very simple system. If somebody wants to go take a look at your property and the property is vacant, now if the property is occupied, then again, follow what I said earlier. But if it's vacant and somebody wants to go in like right now and you could still be at work or you could be busy, you can just simply say, I need 2 pieces of information. I need you to text me a good picture of your driver's license, and then I need you to text me a selfie, of yourself. And what this is for is to make sure that the person that you get the picture from matches the driver's license. And once you have the driver's license, you got the name, the address of the person that's going to your house. So if there is any damage, you know who to go talk to about that. So, but people who do this, people who want to move forward and give you their driver's license, I've never really had anything malicious because they know where they live. I'm sorry, you know where they live from their driver's license. So that right there is a simple system that you can do. Once they text that to you, then you can use the codeboxinc.com website to log in and actually generate a code, give it to them over the phone. They can take a look at it on their own leisure. They'll leave, they put the key back in. It's very simple to do. And now that saves you the trip of having to go out there and come back. And the people can see it on their time frame. And it doesn't have to match your time frame. So if people want to go out there on the weekends, on Saturdays and Sundays, it doesn't bug you. It doesn't bug, your family time, or it doesn't distract you and you're not running out there multiple times a day trying to get this thing rented. Because I know that is just a headache for landlords, is to try to get this thing to schedule showings and to get it rented. So this right here could be a dramatic relief for you. I would have to highly recommend checking it out. There are other solutions out there. This is just one. I would just say if you're interested, just do self-showing solutions through Google and then see what you find. Okay, but CodeBox is one of them. Now, again, if you want to do the driver's license route, that's an easy system to keep in mind to allow people to go in, and then you can keep that information, keep them in your phone, transfer them to your computer so you can keep track of who went into your property, what days, what times, things like that. So that's one of the things that you can do to help automate, set up a system, and then make your time much more efficient by allowing self-showings. Now, if you don't like that, absolutely don't use it. Okay, I'm trying to give you things that I've used that have been efficient for me, that have worked well. And if you don't feel comfortable with that, then don't. Just simply schedule it. It does take a little more time, but at least you'll have the peace of mind that you're looking for. Next thing we have to do is process applications. Now, realistically, if you do this using a third-party provider or even a property management system, this right here is a no-brainer for processing applications. If you have, also, let me kind of go through a couple of examples. If you're using a property management system, you have a rental application that comes in. Most of the time, you'll get a text or an email that says, hey, you've got a new application from John Smith about this property. And you're like, awesome, that's great. You log into your property management system or use the mobile app. You look at their application. There's one quick button in there that you can use for your property management system that says run application or run somebody through the criminal, the credit background, the eviction database, the sexual offender database. It kind of, systems out there that runs them through all of it. Now, it does cost you. You have to put a credit card on file. It might cost you some money to run that. But as long as you view the application and they meet all of your criteria from the application, make enough money, they've been at their job long enough, things like that, then you can move forward and get them processed. But if your management system, you can do it right then. And then the system right there will kind of give you an answer, yes or no, is this somebody you want to move in? So that's one way of doing it. If you don't have a management system, then you can always use a third-party provider, a tenant screening company. And these are people who that's their whole business, is all they do is run applications and give you an answer, yes or no, move this person in, or, don't even think about it, whatever those two extreme answers are. So if you have that, you can always, for the tenant screening companies, they can typically give you a link to their site that people can log in and fill out an application. Again, they do that. They pay for the application fee online. You don't have to do anything. All you do is get notified that you received an application and that things are being processed. And in maybe 2 or 3 days, you have an answer of whether or not this person would qualify as a rental, as a renter for your property. So if you set things up, it's really that easy. It takes very little time for you to go through and do this. It could just take minutes for you just to review stuff at the most if you have these systems set up. Now, if you don't, we do provide an application in the landlord starter kit document. So you do have your own application to fill out. This right here is a longer approach. And for those people that still want to do it, we provide it for them. We just don't recommend it, because of the time involved. I'm all about just trying to do things faster, more efficient. But you can meet with somebody, or you can email them a paper copy of your application and say, please fill this out. You can meet with them, get it signed. You then have to collect the money from them, either cash or something like that for your application fee. Then you will have to scan this in, go do your own background checks on the sites that you do your background checks on, come up with your own decision, and then move forward. So that does take a lot more time, because most of the time you're going to meet with them. Now, sometimes if you want to do this, you can have like a little stand. It's just like a little paper stand that you put maybe in the kitchen, or if there's a table somewhere to put up, and it has applications in it that people can grab an application and fill it out while they're there. That's always something that you can do too, but it still requires you to meet with them or somehow get payment from them for the application fee. So however you want to do it, just think about the ways that you're operating and try to make it as efficient and streamlined as you possibly can. So once you're back to sort of processing applications, I'm trying to give you just the different ways. I'm not sure where you're at, but these are all different ways that you can set up your system. And once all of these pieces come together, it really becomes a very smooth system for running your properties, and you have very little time involved. You just already know what's going to be involved with it, or you've done these steps, so that now it's a piece of cake because you know what to expect. Filling out the lease. So again, this is different depending on how you're currently set up. If you are using a property management system, this could be simply, there's most property management systems have a way for you to set up a lease. You can copy and paste your existing lease into the online system, and then basically you could just simply convert that application. So if somebody already has an application with you electronically, there's typically a feature inside the property management system that says convert to tenant, and it takes all of their information from the application and automatically moves it directly in and configures that tenant to move into the property. That's what's just so awesome. No more rekeying, no more typing, nothing like that. It automatically converts, move people over. So, and once that process goes, then you can automatically send them an email with the electronic digital copy of the lease. They can read it, do a digital signature with their email. They sign it, get the lease back to you, and at that point, you're ready to go. And then that part took minimal time to do. Just merely phone call communication. Just let them know that, great, you were approved. Please look for my email here. I'm going to send you a copy of your lease in the next hour. If you don't receive it, please check your junk mail, things like that. It's coming from me. This is what you're going to see. Read the lease. Please let me know if you have any questions. Sign it, and then I'll get it back, and then we'll move on to the next step. So that is as simple as it is. But then if you're doing it manually, now you're printing the lease out that we have here on the veteranlandlord.com. You're printing it out and filling it out. There's a whole training that we put together, video on how to fill out the lease, how to fill everything out to make sure you get everything in there correctly. So follow that if you're doing it manually. Of course, you will need to have them go. If you already have a digital signature, once you fill out the lease, you can scan it in as a digital document and then send that to them to be signed. That's another way that you can do it. You can mail them the lease or just physically meet with them and have them sign it. So I'm not sure which way you're coming, but there's multiple different ways of doing it. I would just advise you to come up with the way that you're most comfortable with, that works the best for you. So one of the things when you're filling out the lease is I want to make sure that you check your state laws for the security deposit. This is one of those things where each state has different laws on how much security deposit you can possibly collect. So sometimes you're going to get applications that's going to require a judgment call. Okay? And the judgment call could be like, well, this person had like, for instance, they might have gone through bankruptcy and they wiped all their bills out, which is good because now they don't have any bills and they're coming back. Well, if that's the case, you might feel comfortable if you get a larger deposit. Well, how much of a deposit can you ask for that's within the law bounds of the law? Check your state for that. Okay. Sometimes it's 2 times the monthly rent. Sometimes it's 3 times the monthly rent. I don't know anybody that has an unlimited amount. I don't know any state that has that. There is some kind of limit as far as what you can charge them, but do whatever you feel is comfortable. Put that into your lease, but just make sure it's within state laws because the lease is a legal contract, and I don't want you to do anything that's illegal or will get you in trouble. Okay? So, as far as filling out the lease, there's several different ways you can do it depending upon how your system is set up. The security deposit. Now, here's the one thing about this when people start moving into a unit, depending on how they move in, I made this mistake before where I accepted a lease for somebody, they signed the lease, and then it was almost like a month later that they were looking to move in because they were moving into town or something like that. I remember one person was moving into town. They were signing it from out of state, and then lo and behold, I get to like 2 days before, it's like a day or two before the move in, they give me a call and say, "Oh, you know what? I'm so sorry. I found something else that I like better than yours, and I'm not moving into your unit." And I'm just thinking to myself, well, what do you mean you're not moving into my unit? We signed a lease. You have a lease with me, and you told me you're moving in like 3 weeks ago, and I've had this place sitting here waiting for you to get moved in. And then they just simply either don't move in, they don't answer your phone calls. If they're courteous enough, they'll at least call you and tell you that they're not moving in. But bottom line, that can happen. Now, whether it be a month, whether it be a week, couple weeks, whatever that is, you want to make sure absolutely that you get a security deposit equal to at least a month's rent to hold the property to let them move in. And just let them know that, hey, the security deposit's going to hold it because we're taking the property off the market because we're releasing it to you. You signed the lease. Now we need a security deposit. And if you don't move in, the security deposit is non-refundable. That's considered damages for you not moving in as compensation for me taking the property off the market. So that's one of the things I would urge you to do to put into your management system your system for landlording is make sure you get a security deposit. Make that you have to do this, otherwise I cannot take the property off the market for you. So I'm going to have to keep trying to find another tenant if you don't want to put down a security deposit. Okay, so that's just one of the things that I tell people, learn from my mistake. At least you have something. If somebody calls you and they lose a month's rent, at least you haven't lost. You might put the property back on the market, but at least you have a month's rent or possibly more to compensate you for that property being off the market. So you're not at a loss for that. Now, finally, at this particular point, if you're moving a tenant in, then you're sort of at the end of this cycle. Congrats. The person's finally moving in. Great. So now what I would have you do is just make sure that you use the move-in form that comes with the landlord starter kit. Use the move-in form as you walk through the unit with them to make a note of anything that's not perfect. There's really no house out there that's going to be absolutely perfect. There's your houses that are going to have some blemish on it, some problem. You just want to make sure when the tenant moves in, that you make a note of all that, so it's not held against them when they move out. So, and that's what the move-in form does. The move-in form just simply identifies the things that are wrong with the property, so that the tenant, when they move out, are not held responsible. And now you have it in writing. As of the time that they moved in, they sign it, and now you got their signature. So anything that's not on that list when they move out, they're responsible for fixing. And that's how it works. And that same form is what's used when they move out. So you do a comparison when they do move out. So one of the things I always like to do to include with the move-ins is don't make any assumptions that the tenants moving in understand how to use everything that's in the place. I know this sounds simplistic. Show people how to use a thermostat. And that you may be like, just thinking, what? You have to show people everything about their place. If it's a single family, it's an apartment. If it's an older thermostat or a digital one, make sure they understand how to use it. If the thermostat has batteries in it, make sure you tell them that this runs off batteries and that here in a few months, this battery indicator may come up on the display. They have to change the batteries. And if they don't do that, then their furnace or whatever may not come on. The system may not work if the thermostat is out of batteries. So show them how to turn the cooling on, show them how to turn the heat on, show them how to adjust the temperature. I know it sounds easy, but doing this will prevent them from either making a mistake or calling you later to get an explanation of how to do something. Show them where the electric panel is. If it's an apartment or a house, show them where the fuse box is, where the circuit breaker panel is. Show them where it is. Show them what a breaker looks like when it's off. Pop the breaker back on. Have them understand that, because if they plug something up into the kitchen and they blow a circuit breaker, you want to make sure they're smart enough to go pop that back on, because you've trained them how to do that, where it is. Because sometimes panels in apartments can be in little tricky places. You want to tell them where it is, and if they do call, just say, go check your breaker box and make sure nothing's blown. They know where to go check it, and they're familiar with that because you did that on your move-in. Show them where any water shutoffs are. Heaven forbid, show them where the toilet water shutoff is, the shutoff for the vanities, the sinks. If it's a single family house, show them where the water comes into the house, where the main water shutoff is, just in case there's any leaks or any problems. That worst case, they can just shut the water off to prevent damage. But they don't know where these things are unless you show it to them, because this is a new house, and that's why I do this on the move-in, is to make sure they know where these things are at. Before I leave, I always make sure I go through and make sure they understand how to pay rent, whether it's through a property management system, an online app, PayPal, Venmo, send a money order, cashier check. I don't know if you take cash. I don't take cash as a viable form of payment. I don't like that, because then you've got to have a receipt book that you're taking around all the time and providing receipts to people. If you do that, you have that, great. I just don't like taking cash, because then you potentially run. I've never had this problem, but other friends of mine have had the problem where you go, well, I gave you too much rent last month to pay for last month and this month. Yes, I gave you 2 months cash. And of course, there's no way to prove it once it's already done. Now you get into this fight that I gave you the money, and you're like, no, you didn't. You gave me 1 month's rent. Well, now who wins on that? So that's why I don't like getting cash. I like getting money orders, something like that the bank ends up scanning, so I can always get a picture of it later if I need to from the bank. So again, when they pay rent, try to get certified funds if you're meeting with them at the property. Certified funds, do not let somebody move in with a check, because a check is something that you don't know of. Now, you might take a check later, once they're proving themselves, but when they move in, you want to make sure they have certified funds. You want to make sure they're actually giving you money. So how do they pay their rent when they move in? How do they do maintenance requests? What are the phone numbers? Do they go through their tenant portal? Do they call you? Do they have a magnet on their refrigerator that says, here's the phone number, or a way of contacting people for maintenance? You want to go over all of that, because you want them to be as well prepared for living in your unit as they possibly can. Because the more they're prepared, the less they call you as a landlord for answers. So, and again, just stop and just ask them, do you have any questions over anything that we talked about, or any questions about how anything right here operates? Now, even if they have a garage and you have a garage door opener keypad on the outside, show them how to use that. If so, even program their own code in there. If you know how to program it, it's very easy to do, but just program their own code in there so that they've got their own code, or show them how to use it. Okay. A lot of people have never used a garbage disposal. This is one thing that ran across a problem. It's not on this particular slide, but it just popped into my head. Show them how to use a garbage disposal, because if people never use it, a garbage disposal will end up rusting if it's not used. There's something about the garbage disposal using that kind of lubricates itself and keeps it from rusting out. So if nobody ever uses it, then eventually you're going to have a clog problem with different food falling down there, and it's going to back up. I'm going to have an issue. So show people at least once every couple weeks, turn the garbage disposal on, let it run, and make sure that nothing's stuck in there. Okay. And then finally, on move-in, you just want to make sure you collect all the money due, certified funds, hand the person the keys, and at that point, the tenant has been moved in and you're all ready to go. So right now, that was it. I just want to go over, a lot of landlords have questions over, like, what do I have to do from the time it vacates to it goes vacant, or if it's vacant to move in? Here's all the steps that you have to do, all the different things that you're looking at. So I hope you enjoyed the training. Thank you so much, and have a great day.